All right, welcome back to the Sean Trey Show. To all of our guests watching, which probably is my mom and probably a couple other close friends at this point in time. But I got someone really cool today, so I'm hoping that people are tuning in. Now, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. First of all, it's cool to be on the show, and it's pretty cool that we're on different corners of the planet here.
Right?
This different corners of this giant flat Earth that we live on.
Right?
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Phillip Peterson, and I'm a music producer and creative, whatever you want to call it, here in Seattle, Washington.
Nice. Now, let's dive in. Now, what does your job entail? What do you do day to day type of work for your work?
Well, really, every day is pretty different. I don't really have like a boss, like I do my own thing. But I do have lots of bosses, if that makes sense, because most of my living comes from clients and projects that I do. So
yeah,
it's sort of the weird thing where it's a little bit childish to be like, I want to work. Consider myself, my old self, like I want to work for myself and I won't have to have a boss. And it's like, actually, when you do that, kind of everyone is your boss. So it's an interesting thing. Like, I set my own hours and I set my own schedule and that kind of thing. But I still am subject to, who's writing the checks and that kind of thing. Right. And actually, we're going to get into that more too.
Awesome.
Because things are shifting a little bit.
In the industry or in your life?
For me. Yeah, for me.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, you in your job, you wear many hats. Some of them are producer, songwriter, musician in and of itself. What type of things are you doing there?
Well, I guess it's probably easier to describe it sort of on a timeline, chronologically, to some degree.
Okay.
I started off in a musical family. So I was born into like a church music family, and we toured all over the country, playing at different churches, and we were involved in a lot of like conferences and that sort of thing, because the whole family played music together, and kind of more of a classical bent too, which kind of set us apart.
Interesting. Okay. What did you play at that time? Were you?
So I'm still a cellist, and that was the instrument that I was started on at 3 years old when we started doing this family gig. And I have a younger sister and an older brother, so there was three kids, and mom and dad, and we were a pretty tight 5-piece thing for what we did, and so throughout that process, I learned how to improvise. I learned how to read music. I had private instruction, and just got that crafts, that part of the craft. Got a lot of exposure to that, and a lot of exposure to playing in front of people. So, so by the time I was, I don't remember when I was like really nervous to be in front of people. That just like isn't a thing when I get on stage or whatever that is. So fast forward to college, I was getting my degree in cello performance, and this was the 90s. So in Seattle in the 90s, there was a big push. There was a big boom of people making music in studios. Like it was like the trendy thing to do was to make a record.
It was in the 90s, Seattle was kind of the epicenter of some new musical trends as well.
Right. And so it was that time when everyone was moving here to try, because it was just like, because I'm a tiny bit younger than the grunge artists, right? So
Yeah.
I know some of those guys, and I've worked with some of those guys too, but I'm like just a little bit generationally younger than those guys. So I wasn't really part of the grunge movement per se as an artist. I was more one of those, like a fan, when I was a kid. And so what happened was everybody started moving to Seattle to try to make it in the music industry, which is pretty hilarious because the people from Seattle that made it, they didn't make it in Seattle. It was like a kind of like a good market proving ground, but Nirvana was signed in New York, and all the money came from LA for all these bands. Sub Pop benefited from some of that stuff, but they didn't actually make those bands famous. They were just smart enough to own a bunch of those bands' first records and stuff before the big labels came and put the big promo behind it and made them an international entity and famous kind of thing. So it was kind of hilarious because then everybody started moving to Seattle, thinking that Seattle was the place to be.
I worked in film for a long time, so there's a huge parallel with Los Angeles.
Yeah,
Everyone moves to LA to be a movie star, but
right.
very
But
few people actually come up through LA.
Right. It's like you're a movie star who lives in LA, but you made it somewhere else or from somewhere else. And then,
but the people who move there, they don't really move up.
no, no. Well, and the same with LA can be very that way with music as well. Like,
yes.
if I always tell people, it's good to move to LA at one point of your career.
Agreed.
Because it can really open doors for you, but it's better to move there when you have your brand put together and you know exactly
100%.
who you are. And actually, LA appreciates you more when you are bringing something different to the table instead of just like doing it the LA way, if that makes sense.
No, 100%.
I hope I'm not angering any of my LA people by
I'm
saying that.
sure we're probably stepping on somebody's toes. There's always someone you're going to piss off, but what can you do?
Yeah.
So you were so you were talking about people were coming to Seattle at that time.
So I actually did benefit from that because what happened is a ton of people moved here as young aspiring artists, and there was the trend, with Nirvana Unplugged, they had a cellist, and there was a couple other things that had some strings that, so being a cellist was like a cool thing that not so everyone is now in Seattle. Everyone plays guitar, and Jarls speaks grunge. The grunge language is called Jarl. Jarlish.
I never knew that.
up.
Oh, really? Okay.
I made that up just now.
I was like, wow, that's awesome.
And so everybody was trying to do this music thing, and there were some people that felt like they needed strings or a cellist or whatever, and so I had these opportunities to go into the studio and work with people, and because of my upbringing of not just being a classical player, but knowing how to improvise and follow and be in an ensemble and basically be in a band, because I grew up basically in a classical band, but we could improvise. We could be on page or off page. Okay. And in fact, both of my siblings are great improvisers and readers for that reason as well. What happened was
this is the 90s, so you got the Dave Matthews type of bands that are coming up, and there's they had strings and
exactly, and they were like ahead of their time in that regard. To have a violin in their band was like a really cool niche thing, right? So like nowadays everybody has strings in their band or a violinist or whatever. They it feels like that, but in the 90s it was more rare and more of a cool add-on, upgrade, whatever you want to say. Like you have your ballad and you need the strings. So, so because of my improvisational training and because of the climate of Seattle being a very DIY town, especially in the 90s. So like, for example, I don't think any of the music producers in Seattle actually knew how to read music. Like that was weird because there was two different camps of music. There was rock and there was nerd. And so like, because
Right.
I could speak nerd and I could speak rock, I had this niche where people just kept hiring me to be on their records, and then I would just keep getting better at being in the studio, and then ended up doing more stacking and more arranging and that kind of thing, and then that grew into orchestrating for other instruments and adding violins and violas and bass and winds. And meanwhile, I had grown up also playing in a lot of orchestra stuff, so I actually have timpani, and I'm a pretty decent like orchestral percussionist. And
Okay.
also I play some brass. So I have some exposure to several things. I play baritone. In fact, I played flugelbone on Lana Del Rey's record
That's
that
awesome.
was Grammy nominated, but they wrongfully gave me credit for flugelhorn because they didn't believe that the flugelbone is a real thing. I was like, no, I'm the top flugelbone player probably of all time, but they
Really?
miscredited me, and I'm not the top flugelhorn player of all time. Like I can't like compete with Chuck Mangione and stuff. Like I
Yeah,
can't,
yeah.
So anyway, it's a stupid claim to fame, but it's probably true. I mean, I'm on them. They like featured me at the end of her title track, and that's like mostly baritone horn and flugelbone, not flugelhorn.
I
Flugelbone is
got
different.
I have to look up what the hell a flugelbone is, and
It's
I'm gonna
pretty
pop up a
rare.
picture of what it is, and when we edit this. So
It's pretty nerdy. It's pretty nerdy. It's not a flugelhorn, which is more common. So anyway,
okay,
I think they just like didn't believe me that was a real thing, and then they just gave me
put
credit for
flugelhorn.
flugelhorn, which is so nerdy of me to even be annoyed by that. But oh well.
That's awesome.
I
It's a
think you
good
can
thing to
see
be
why though.
annoyed by.
Yeah, because I think you can see why. Because there's like lots of flugelhorn players. Like that doesn't
Yeah,
set me apart. I don't play the flugelhorn.
yeah.
I mean, I can, but anyway. So I had a bunch of exposure to different orchestral instruments, and so I started doing more orchestrations. And then, meanwhile, the other thing I did that was, I think, such an essential part of what got me here um, in a good way, and that is, meanwhile, I wanted to do my own thing. I didn't want to just like play on everybody else's stuff. So I started my own band with a couple buddies and stuff. And what we did is we wrote our own stuff, and we weren't trying to. We already were sort of like saw the grunge thing happening, and we were kind of like, a little jaded about it. Like, oh, everybody came to our town, and that's not even our thing. Like, so we kind of had like a happy, fun, poppy power pop band, like almost more like a
Nice.
Weezer or like I'd say like Presidents of the USA is a good
Okay.
example, and they're from here. So I mean, it's definitely some of that in the DNA. Like, and so we had this band like that, and what we did right was, and I always tell people to do this now after the fact, like, wow, I didn't realize that this is what was the smart thing to do. But we hired other producers and other engineers and studios and stuff, because this wasn't the time of like home
Home
recording
studio
really,
stuff.
unless you had
No.
like a Tascam like 8-track tape machine or
Yeah.
something,
Right.
or 4-track. And some of our friends did have those things too. But we with all the orchestra stuff that I wanted to do, and I wanted to do horn sessions and that kind of thing, and I wasn't really a producer or an engineer at all. I was purely just a musician. And so we would hire producers, two or three, four producers in particular, to make our records. And then those producers would go like, well, and then they would see what we could do, particularly me with the orchestration and the string arrangements and stuff. and how fast, because I'm so, I'm so fast in the studio. Like I get mad if I have to do a second take, just fast, because I hear it in my brain before I play it or sing it or whatever, So, and it was fun too, because I could do some vocals too. So that was fun to be able to do my own writing and singing and that kind of stuff. But what happened is those producers all got a taste of what was possible. And so then when they were working on other people's records, they would bring me in.
Nice.
And so not only did I have people, that just wanted me for the string arranging thing, but then I also had a grip of people who really understood more what it was that I could really do beyond what just that one niche. And so then they started hiring me. The river started flowing the other way.
Just getting bigger, bigger, bigger.
Exactly. And then I produced a record that there was a couple different successes. There was a band that we played on Carson Daly, and that was pretty successful. And that was quite a while later. So then in the early 2000s, so I did really well in the mid through the late 90s locally. And then what happened was in the early 2000s, we all started getting our own recording gear because, having done it several years of hiring studios and engineers and producers, it was just like, this is just too expensive,
When was the big shift off of tape onto digital? When did that really happen?
It happened gradually throughout the 90s, I would say.
Because that would have changed. Did that change and make it easier for people to kind of get their own gear at that point in time, or was it still?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would actually say the really big shift happened with interfaces. So like when the M box came out, which was I think like 2000, 2001, like kind of right around there. Maybe I'm not sure. We could probably Google that and look it up.
I'll pop up the year in editing.
Right. But when like 2-channel personal digital audio interfaces came out, I would say that was the biggest shift of people being able to do stuff on their own. There were some people that were doing their own tape before that, which they were pretty much pioneers in that way, but also have their limitations too. There's only so much you can do with one of those tape machines as opposed to, the full big, 2-inch reel-to-reel thing. But also it was starting to become really costly to cut to tape, too. And also, it's cool if your band's all practiced and you all know exactly what you're doing and you can cut to tape. But, if you need more than a few takes, it's just a lot easier to deal with digital. So we were doing both. If we knew what we wanted to do, we would cut to tape. And if we were experimenting or whatever, we would use Digital Performer or something else like that back then to, and just go digital with it so that we had more options and easier to edit for sure.
Right. Kind of so you guys were then, you were shifting toward getting your own gear because I interrupted you.
Yeah. So in the early 2000s, I got my own gear and a computer, and I started to record my own ideas and stuff. And, there was a big learning curve because there's one thing to be a great session player, and it's another thing to be a producer and an engineer, which I did not go to school to be an engineer. So I had a lot to learn there. But on the other hand, I had so much exposure. Like I had seen people using Pro Tools for years now in the studio, and I saw how they did it. And I knew the basic concepts. And so I just kind of taught myself how to use Pro Tools. And, and it's not too hard to learn how to just hit record and play and stuff. And even to this day, people get so fancy with the programs and like they have 70 plugins they're trying to sell me. And I'm just like, dude, I just record the sound that I want it. I think I'm old school in this way. I make the exact sound from the instrument or the amp that I want to sound like, and then I capture that sound. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily make the sounds happen digitally. I use maybe a little bit of compression or whatever it is, some auto tune or whatever I choose to use as a plugin, fine. But I don't make the sound in the plugin.
Got it.
I make the sound exactly how I want it, or at least as close as I can. And then I
That's
hit
awesome.
record, you know?
Yeah.
So then, the studio, the bigger studio thing was still going as I was developing this home studio thing. And they were both simultaneously going for a while. And there was a couple bands that then started to get pretty successful that I had arranged for, and one of them that I was in. And then that just started to open doors. And then the big labels and stuff started to see the things that I was on, and different producers would call me and kind of pass me around or whatever. And so that was a really good and lucrative time. I'd say, you know, that whole first decade of the 2000s was really, really good. And all the way until about, I'd say, it just kept ramping up till about 2014. And then things kind of plateaued in a different way. But also sort of what happened around that time too was that there's lots of great string players, and the climate had totally changed with part of becoming a professional musician. So the generation, you know, one generation younger than me, they're growing up with an interface at home. They're growing up with way more exposure to the technology, and there's a lot more resources. People started caring about, like, oh, let's get good instruments in the hands of kids and stuff. I still sometimes feel like, man, if I had some of those opportunities that these kids have nowadays, geez,
I remember I studied guitar when I was younger. It was like beating my head against the wall, because, you know, I could maybe pick up one of the books, but it was just, you know, they weren't great. Now, you know, you look at the apps that kids have to learn their instrument. It's
or you
nuts.
can just get on YouTube, and there's everything for you on YouTube.
So many tutorials, about in any instrument you can imagine. It's not
and
just
if you
the
don't
guitar,
like some option, there's 20 other people talking about the exact same thing. There's going to be somebody that you can connect with, you know? So, yeah. So then it sort of became this weird thing where a lot of people started to do what I was doing, which is kind of cool and awesome, because I feel like, you know, I helped pave the way or something, but maybe that's just my own weird thing. But it became this sort of thing where I was like, oh, well, now what I do is two things. It's kind of an industry standard now to have arrangements and strings and whatever in your stuff, kind of like it used to be in the Motown or Stax era, but they would just have their crew, right? And then that kind of just went away. And then it became just like a normal thing to have a violin in your band or whatever. So now, you know, I became sort of less special in a way. So luckily, luckily I was already really established. And so then, because I had done a lot of my own producing for my own band, so what happened too then at some point with the home audio, my own stuff with my own bands became easier to just do at home. So I was using my own projects to get better at the home recording techniques. And man, I would have been so much faster at that stuff if there had been more stuff available. I mean, it was kind of the Wild West.
Right.
So then I started focusing more on the doing my own stuff, which is, you know, really rewarding. and then that kind of mashed in, those two kind of career legs kind of mashed into each other, and we ended up, there was a band that I produced that ended up on Carson Daly, and was just almost, so we had a record deal with, I think it was Virgin Europe. And then what happened is Universal US bought Virgin Europe. I might be wrong about this, but anyway, a US label bought the European label, which meant, of course, the super highly artistic Seattle band that wasn't a bubblegum thing totally got dumped. So then we lost our record deal because of that, which sucked, because I put a lot of years, like good 3 years into that project, and we were so close. Like we had toured, we had, packed out the Bowery Ballroom, and we'd done some nice things in the U.S. And
This
then
is something that I
fizzled
talked
away.
to about. Film is the same, and a lot of creative professions are the same. For a long time, there have been the idea of these gatekeepers. It's you have this huge pool of talent, but so often that talent doesn't get promoted up. And it's not necessarily by talent. It's some arbitrary choice of some person who's just sitting there going, "I'm the guy who decides." In film, it would be the casting directors. You get this cutoff with all these casting directors who wield incredible power in the film industry for who makes it and who doesn't. And it's not that it's bad, but I don't necessarily like it myself, because I feel like there's a bunch of talent out there in the music industry, in the film industry, in the writing, in writing books, screenplays, novels, whatever, that might never make it. But there is this shift now, more so in music, with people being able to self-produce and the distribution channels that are out there, and then YouTube,
Absolutely.
You can put out whatever you want, and no one can say you can't.
Exactly. And I'm doing that right now. I'm trying to discipline myself to put something out as close to every day as I can. I didn't put anything out yesterday, and I don't know what I'm putting out today, but I did have a stint of several days where I put something out every day. For music,
or for just media, or
music and video together. So fast forwarding to now, I think we can go back to the gatekeeper thing too, but fast forwarding to now, my focus right now is actually what brings me joy. What sparks joy for me is I love releasing music and art and video, and also it's like pictures or it didn't happen. So I'm really tired of being a gray play button that you can choose or not choose, or I'm tired of being the background music to something else that you care more about. So I like video. So my YouTube channel is House of Breaking Glass, and
I've watched your stuff and I really enjoy it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And it's the more consistent I am, I've been really trying to discipline myself to do it like as much as possible, because the subscribers just start to tick up when I'm more consistent. And so
I've been noticing the same. I've been doing media for myself and my wife, and my wife is a famous singer here in Vietnam. She was the first winner of Vietnam Idol in 2007, and she's been active in the music scene since. And my background is in, like, I've done a lot of what I did was I worked for 10 plus years, over 10 years, since about 2008. I've been doing media for other artists, helping people create, YouTube channels, helping people just pump out content. And it was all about content. And
good.
And like, it's about the algorithm. If you're creating stuff regularly, it just keeps growing. And for the longest time, I've been building for my wife and I, but we live in a climate here that it's trickier to produce in other countries, because sometimes you have to kind of go with what that flow is there. And so I was, with COVID, what happened is it was just a time to really regroup, because it was like, hang on, what are we putting out right now? And, I helped a lot of people. For my wife and I, we were putting out music, but also like video blogs. And when we started getting into video blogs, it was actually, fun. Not a lot of people doing it. And now it's like, all these influencers are like, this is me eating this food, I'm going to try the spiciest ramen in the town. And it's like, everyone does it. And but the quality is plummeted too at the same time.
Right.
And I'm not hating on people. I'm just saying, the storytelling's not there. So I was sitting there, and I came up with I saw my friend Bao has a podcast that I was really inspired by, and I was like, man, that's awesome. I want to try that too. But mine was just a slightly different focus, and I was like, because everyone can do their own thing. You get a million podcasts, each one is completely different. And I was just like, for a couple of reasons. One, I want to inspire people. That's the base core reason. Two, I actually want something. This is an interesting reason. I want something that when my daughter is in her 40s, she can look back and find media that I created and go, wow, Dad might have actually been a cool guy when he was younger. Yeah. But the other thing I'm trying to do is to try to be visible. Because the more regularly you get stuff out, and I have one of my friends, she's like, you should post every 2 weeks. And I understand the point. I understand the concept. It's good to have regular, but every 2 weeks, you're not going to be getting those algorithms going anywhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
It is about, and it's, who cares about the algorithms, but you have to.
You have to. And also for me, like I've been trying to do, because I'm an audio nerd, I haven't been good at I'm not a camera guy. I'm not, and so I haven't had the luxury of making the content. It's always been a luxury to have like, wow, we're going to actually do a music video instead of be a gray play button, like, get a budget together and all this. And so it's always a big rigmarole to create that type of a content. But, leading up to
now.
But it's easy now.
It's easy now.
Yeah.
All you need is you got an iPhone. You get some these lights here that try to make my room look fancy. They're a little simple. They cost like $20. It's $20 LED lights. I got a ring light in front of me, but yet the quality looks much better. This is a $30 webcam.
And that's not to say that people who are doing amazing cinema that their job is easy or anything. I'm not saying that, but it's just a lot easier to get into it. The other thing too is that when you have good audio, your video actually doesn't have to be that great for like a YouTube setting 100%. Or whatever. It's fine.
You look on YouTube, it's as long as you have good audio, people will forgive you for the video quality. They don't care.
Yeah. And
Let's
so
be
will
real.
I.
What are most people watching on? On their phone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's rare that people like. I have my computer that I do. So I have a video editing computer on that side, and then I have my music, home studio computer here, and I have a nice sound system hooked up. But it's like my wife came down the other day, and I was playing a video from YouTube on my sound system, and she was like, "Oh my God." And it's like, because you're just not used to hearing good stuff on a sound system anymore, because everyone's on a phone. But you can still hear the quality on the phone, and the video quality. Let's be real. I do videography, and I've got cameras that shoot 4K, but you don't need it. 1080 is more than enough. And
it just depends on what you're making, too. So I like 4K for certain things, and so
if I'm
my
doing an art
channel's
video, I'm shooting in 4K. But
and my channel's a mix between things that are more formally produced with like other people behind the camera, and then also just like a blog of me in selfie mode, just taking pictures of food or whatever. So,
but it's all brand building.
It is
all brand building.
So back to I think that this is sort of the tie-in. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking matters into our own hands. We're creating content on our own terms.
Yep.
And frankly, I'm not even doing this for the numbers. Like I don't, I mean, it's cool. It's exciting if I see, 3 new subscribers, like,
Exactly.
5 people
Exactly.
give a crap about what I made. That's cool. But I'm doing it for my own artistic, frankly, sanity. I need to put stuff out.
Yes.
And in
Yes.
this climate, so
Yes.
back to the gatekeepers thing. So I
Well,
actually,
can I comment on one thing? Can I comment on
yes.
one thing?
Yeah.
I learned early on when I was doing videos for people, I stopped counting numbers, and I
Yeah.
told people, don't go near numbers. When I put a video up, I might check the numbers once or twice, but like I've been pumping out these podcasts just because I like them. They're fun.
Hmm.
It's a thing I really enjoy, but I'm not checking my views.
Good.
I'm looking at interactions. I'm looking at, like, are people commenting, and I'm
Hmm.
paying attention to I follow, this is an interesting area I follow. I follow new groups. So I'm like, I look at, like, hang on, this is a demographic I've never tapped into before. That's interesting. I wonder
Mm-hmm.
where these people are coming from, because that might affect my content, and just not,
Right.
I just to be aware of that. Not that I'm trying to make for that, but just, that's interesting, but it's about, you got to let it go. You
Yeah.
create and it's done. And
Well,
you move
here's the
on to the next
gatekeeper thing.
creation. Yeah.
So what's happening is the big industry people,
Hmm.
the labels and people that they care about the numbers.
Yeah.
So when the biggest artist in the world has a big hit and they're going to put out their next song, this is a true story, and they go on their social media and they're begging people, like, in this sad way. It's like, you're the biggest singer in the world and you're begging people to care about your next song
Right.
because you're worried that the numbers aren't going to match your last thing and then you won't be the biggest artist in the world. Well, first of all, no one's the biggest artist in the world for more than 5 minutes. Everybody
Right.
takes their turn. And
Right.
secondly, like, it's so bad for art. So this last year, personal experience, I worked on 5 different huge artists, like huge artists.
Mm-hmm.
Um, both American and Canadian artists. I'm sure you can guess who some of them might be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it, and and this never happens to me, but this last year, a bunch of them got shelved. And
Really?
nothing to do with me. It was actually, and they learned from it too, because then there was another one that they were going to bring me on, and they blew the whistle. They were like, "Don't play on this song. Just wait." And then it turns out, I'm pretty sure it got shelved. So luckily they didn't waste my time on that one, but I worked
Yeah.
on several things that got shelved for huge artists this year. And I mean, I'm not used to that. Like, normally when I work on the really big artists, it's like I'm one of the last people to touch the song and then it comes out.
Mm.
So, but I think because of the COVID climate, the record labels lost a lot of money from not being
Yeah.
able to do the big live shows and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Right.
they're a lot more careful about what they're going to put their money behind. And the thing is that it's a product, right? So
Yeah.
if you're going to go to the grocery store, you need to be in a package and it needs to fit on the shelf. And a lot of times if you're manufacturing a bag of chips, you actually pay for your spot on that shelf,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like how the record labels are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it becomes this product oriented thing, which I'm fine with commerce, right? I need commerce. I need money to keep my electricity on too.
Right.
So I'm not like hating on commerce. I actually think that there is a balance between art and commerce. But I would just say, if you're the biggest artist in the world and your A&R guy gets to shelve your song, are you an artist? I don't know. Yes, probably the answer is yes, but it definitely puts a hole in things. It's like, can't you just put stuff out?
Well, it looks like it reminds me of, like, one person that pops into my mind that I would find as interesting is, I was thinking about Beyonce's album a couple years ago,
Mhm.
and it resembled nothing of what she had done before. And a lot of people were like, what's this? And it was like, this is her art.
Yeah.
This is her having enough money and enough
Yeah.
pull that she can put out whatever the hell she wants to put out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
She didn't have to joke through the checks, you know, and maybe, you know, it's, I mean,
She
you
probably fought. She probably fought with some people to be able to do that, even however much money you have, right?
Yeah,
Because it's
agreed.
still the big machine, right?
Yeah.
You could be a big actor and you're still going to be subject to the decisions that the producers, directors,
Right.
whoever makes.
Well, and it's even more evident with what's going on right now with the power struggle that's coming out of Marvel and Disney and, you know, the Scarlett Johansson case.
Yeah.
You know? It's really, if you want to look at someone that's going to be a litmus test for the direction of the future of the film industry, that case is going to affect things dramatically.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a really interesting one to look at, as, you know, how, you know, because of COVID, the shift in, I mean, it's going to be interesting with music. What happens with music? You know, I'm sure live shows will come back. You know, Lollapalooza, they ran it this year. It was a really interesting situation where, you know, everyone had to get COVID tests. People had to provide vaccinations, cards and such. But it wasn't, you know, they still had it. And, you know, but, you know, with the movie industry, things are still rough right now, you know, with the movie theaters opening up. So,
yeah. And so they have to be more careful about where they're putting their money, because there's less to go around. And, you know, I get that. But I think what's really cool, this is the cool opportunity. And this is how music and acting and artists and people who consider themselves to be creatives, we have a really cool opportunity. And that is, we can choose to not be part of the service industry.
I like that.
Because music, I'm so tired of, and so much of my career I've done work for commercials and films and whatever. And that's fine. I'll still do the right gig when it comes around and stuff. I'm not like, this isn't a hard line in the sand. But as a general direction, I don't want to be in the service industry anymore. So, like, for example, if you hire me to mix your record, I'm not going to do notes. I'm not going to do revisions. I mean, maybe a little, but you're not going to tell me how to mix it. And you're not going to tell me what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. Because if that was the case, then that's your job. You just mix it then. Like,
right.
if I, and this goes both ways too, because I don't mix my own material for that same reason, because I want someone who can see the forest for the trees. I want somebody else to have perspective. So I might mix your record because I have perspective. Now, I'm not going to mix my own record, but if I think that you're a good enough mixing person to mix my record, I'm going to lead with this. Hey, here's my record. I want you to mix it, because you're you, and I want your taste on this, and no notes. I'm not going to give you any notes. So whatever the mix sounds like, that's the mix, and I'm not giving you any notes. And it's cool because it's a respect thing. It's an honor thing, but it's also a gauntlet, because now you're like, well, this guy's not giving me any notes. I better like knock this out of the park. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Because that's why we're doing this. And it's not, it's mixing as an art. Mixing and mastering could be an art, and any element of the music game can be an art. And if it's only doing it as a service industry thing, it's just like, I may as well just go sell shoes then. There's no art in it then, if it's just a service industry thing. And it's the same with directors for film, you know, and the demo love trap. So I always, I've turned down some gigs recently because directors are like, oh, I want it to sound like this song, but a little bit of this song and a little bit of that. Yeah. And I'm like, I know, first of all, I know the people that you're trying to rip off, and that's disrespectful. I like know them. Those are colleagues of mine. So like, don't do that. And then secondly, like, you're disrespecting me. Like, this is what I do as an artist, and now you're telling me, you know, oh, it needs to be a picture of a blue cow on the needs to match my couch and my curtains. And it's like, that's not art. That's decorating. That's different. So we need to move away, and part of the great attrition that we're part of right now, where everyone's leaving their jobs and stuff, I'm really hoping that people can get a clue, creatives like you and I can get a clue and stop being part of the service industry. We don't need to.
Well, that's
We
what
don't
something
need to.
I was looking at that as well. Like, there's an industry that's built up around the industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Around ripping each other off.
Yeah.
Making the same exact movie over and over and over.
Exactly. And even with like the industry around getting into the industry, you know, so there's these people that are there that are going to help you get signed with an agent or with a record deal, and like, in these ideas that like, there's this gauntlet that people have to run through that creates competition, and the competition, you know, it's like the Hunger Games. All these people are pitted against each other when they could be collaborating.
We could be collaborating. Why aren't we working on our own stuff?
Yeah.
Like, with each other. Like, you know, I don't have every single skill ever. I need other people.
Where is this idea coming from that there is a scarcity?
And that it's a competition. It's not a competition.
Where is that idea coming from? But people have to be perpetuating that.
Oh yeah, I think that both the film and music industry perpetuate that Disney Cinderella ideology of like, if you're just good enough, someone will find you in your dirty hovel and Prince Charming will save you. And it's like, no one is discovered. You know, there's that stupid legend of Toni Braxton that she was singing at the gas station and she got signed. And it's like, no,
she put in work.
She knew what gas station the record she knew who she was trying to sing for, and she knew where he lived. And she definitely put herself at that, you know, she put herself in a position. She wasn't discovered.
You gotta hustle.
She found it.
Yeah. You hustle to get it.
You hustle. That's the thing. You have to hustle.
I have as a video producer, I have one motto. That's my motto for what I do on the production end. I get shit done, and that's it. You know, it's like when people come to me and they say, "This is my video project," I say, "Well, this is how we finish it," because you have to have that drive to get from point A to point Z. You know, to get to your completion point. And I think that is. The art has to match the hustle. You know what I mean? And you can't view it, but yet you can't always do it alone, which is where I think we have to really instill in people that collaboration is the way it has to happen. It
has to be. And you can't just wait for all your ducks to be in a row before you release. So that's the other thing. I like releasing. I would rather release something for 5 people than get something shelved for 0 people.
Yeah, exactly. I was editing my video last night. And so it was with these 2 really, really, really lovely DJs / producers from France, and Bart and Baker. And they were these older guys that are these amazing swing, electro swing. My wife loves it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And they're so awesome. But we had a problem. I was hearing their feed at real time. They were hearing me with a 4-second delay.
Oh.
And so when I had to edit it, it was normally these things it takes me, you know, an hour just to go straight through and edit it. This one took me 4 hours to edit it. And I could have gotten it better, but I was like, you know what? Just get it up. Get it up.
Yeah.
Just
get
it up.
It's never going to be perfect. And then actually, perfection is actually the enemy of beauty.
Agreed.
You know?
Did you ever see that? Did you see that?
Hammer away at something, it's just going to be a flat line.
There was this video recently. It was an advertisement. It was a European advertisement. I can't remember what for. And it was about this engineer producer's in the studio. Producer standing by. The audio engineer is just working away on this track, and he's just like sweating, you know, on the console. And then you're like, what an amazing piece. And then they pan into the recording room, and this person can't sing. They're
Right.
like,
Right.
and this, but I feel like we've entered this period too where people have so many tools they can rely on that some of the skill has dropped too. And I think that's where people try to overcorrect, because your time should be focused on the practice and the rehearsal and getting the piece down. And then when you go, you record, like you said, you get your take done.
Well, and frankly, that's why YouTube and TikTok and stuff, that's why they're sought after by the audiences, because you can't fake it as well. Or if you're churning out material, you don't have time to do all the knob turning and all the stuff.
Right.
It's going to be what it is. It's going to be more real.
And I like that. And I think that's what people like. Well, what advice, if you could go back in time, what advice would you like to give a younger version of yourself?
Hire your heroes. That's something that I did. I hired the people that I really looked up to work on my stuff. And then all of a sudden I became indispensable to them, because then they could see what I brought to the table.
That's awesome.
And that goes along with collaborating. It also invest in. So not only do you hire your heroes, right, who you put on a pedestal up here, but find people who need your help and invest in them, because then you become indispensable to them as well. And you're basically growing your future clients. Always release your material. Even if you don't like it, release it. Yeah. And that, because guess what? It could be the coolest song in the world and you might not like it 6 months later. It's fine. It's actually not for you to like your own art. It's for you to like making your art. It's for the universe to decide what it's going to do with your art, whether it likes it or not. It's not your job. You don't need to like it. You don't need to control the outcome. You just have to make. Otherwise, sorry, but you're not an artist. You're just making a product. You may as well make toilet paper or sell shoes. Right. Not that there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I've thought about, it would be so much more profitable to just make toilet paper or sell shoes, So, but don't try to control the outcome. Of course, doing marketing and PR is great if you can afford it. And if daddy's paying for it, go for it. But don't let anything be a barrier for you just putting out your art and moving on to the next piece of art. Because guess what? That's the only way you're a true artist. It's the only way you're going to keep your mental health as an artist.
Just keep creating.
Is to keep creating and releasing so that you let it go. So that it's not backing up, because it's not art if it's on a hard drive. It's not. It's only art once it's out of your sphere and into the universe. So you have to release your material. That's the only way that you can actually be an artist. You're not an artist with stuff sitting on a hard drive. It's just not going to happen.
You've inspired me. I've been wanting to get a song done a week, and it was my goal, and that's kind of what I'm going to push for. Is to kind of shift that up and step that up.
And something else that goes along with that I always tell people, and I always get mad at them because lots of people will not accept this, but never dilute. Never delete, dilute. So if you put out something that you feel cringy about, well, if you made 69 more things to balance that thing out, then on the rainbow spectrum of your art, it belongs somewhere in there. If you dilute it all out, then it actually makes it like a broader spectrum of what it is that your art is. And now you're not cringy anymore about it. Also, it's not your job to decide anyway.
There was this one. Right? There was this one famous actor that I remember, and they asked him what the key was to his success, Michael Caine's book on acting. And he says, other actors pick their roles. I take whatever they give me. And they're like, well, how do you know? Like, it's going to be good. He's like, I don't know, but it's a numbers game. Yeah. I take whatever comes my way. And then, some of them, you knock them out of the ballpark. Some of them suck. Yeah. But you still have that same chance of having a hit or having it suck if you're getting less stuff done, And
a lot of times things that suck are hits, so you never know.
You look at the Big Lebowski was a flop when it came out, but then it became this pop
legend.
icon.
Yeah.
Legendary. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's true.
Well, dude, I honestly, we are almost out of time. I would love to have you back on sometime, and we can deep dive some more, man.
Sure.
If you might be
Yeah.
open to it. To
Yeah.
finish up, do you have any last thoughts tonight that you'd like to share for the people listening?
Well, being an artist is very difficult, and I retire all the time. I'm like, wow, screw this. I'm done. I'm never going to,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. That's just how it is. So you have to just keep going, and you have to just keep releasing material. And
Yeah.
it's not about numbers. It's about your own mental health. That's why you're doing the art. And if that's not why you're doing it, then get out of the way for somebody
Right.
else to do
Right.
this, because
Yep.
you're just clogging up the drain.
Nice. No, I love it though.
So
It's spot on, man. I really appreciate your time, brother. I hope that we can get you back on again soon.
that'd be great. Yeah,
Awesome,
thanks so
man.
much. It's great to get to know you a little bit, and
Yeah, right.
I'll grill you some more next time.
I like that. Well, maybe we can schedule something for next month. Dive back
Okay,
in.
that
Awesome,
sounds
man.
great. Cool.
Awesome.
All right.